All right, hey there, folks. We're going to give a little bit of a chance for a few more people to show up before we get started. But just so you know that you can type comments into the side there if you want to. And you can also let me know if you want to, after this is done, if you'd rather have it in a different format. We can certainly do a different format. So I'm just going to leave this little fairy here and this little fairy here. And we're going to give a few more minutes for everyone else to join up. And so you should have your rolling pin and some pencils and your clay and a bowl of water and a butter knife. I have a clay knife, but you can have a butter knife and a fork. So we'll get started in just a few minutes. All right, it's 3:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Brooke Johnson. Welcome to Green Road Pottery Online. Hopefully all of you have your paper clay. Now, one of the things, once you open your paper clay, if you keep it in a plastic bag, it will stay really well. So what we're going to focus on today is we're going to focus on making fairies, or if you've taken one of my classes before, you'll notice this basic triangle shape. What we're going to work on a little bit more is adding a head on the top, maybe. Adding some wings on, because the paper clay can add the wings on really well. And it can be anywhere from someone who's like a little beginner doing something like this, something that's a little bit more advanced. But what we're really going to focus on today is how to make this face look a little bit more like a face, if that's one you focus on. And of course, if you want to make a wizard, or you want to make a gnome, or you want to make a whatever it is, you're welcome to make whatever it is. All right, so let's get started. To start off with, to make something about this big, we're going to go with 4 ounces of clay. So if you have 1 pound, cut it in half again. And I'm actually going to adjust my screen a little bit so that you can see a little bit better. All right, so let's go over the ingredient, what you need again, the supplies. So you're going to need a rolling pin, and you're going to need a knife, and you're going to need a fork, and you're going to need 2 pencils, sharpened, but not too sharp, or maybe you can have them sharp if you want. And you'll need a bowl of water. And you can see I just covered my space here with a piece of paper. And you could use a cutting board, or you could use a piece of paper. So you can use as much of this clay as you want to. What I have here is 4 ounces. And you can sort of squish it up and feel like it's sort of like the clay that you may have experienced before. Except this is called paper clay, so it'll air dry. So what you're going to have is more or less a round piece of clay. And this water, you can always get it a little bit wet, and that will help things stick. And that will really let you smooth stuff if you want to use a little bit of water to smooth it. All right, So what we're going to do to start off with, and it's going to be very similar to what we've done before, is we're going to use our pencils, and that's going to help keep our piece of clay from getting too thin. And so you'll just roll it a little bit with your rolling pin, turn it, roll it a little bit more, turn it. And again, this should be very familiar for anyone who's taken one of my classes before. This basic setup. And of course, you can make whatever it is that you want. But to start off with, we're just going to work on the similar shape. So you end up with something more or less round. And what you're going to do is you're going to start off by cutting it in half. Again, anyone who's taken the class before is familiar with that. So you're going to cut it in half, and we're going to pinch it together. Now, one of the different things with paper clay that you can do that you don't that isn't as important as with regular clay is scoring and slipping. So what's most important is getting this a little bit wet. And then you're going to pinch it together. And you can see it doesn't like to stick right away, but if you really pinch it and smooth it, right? So I have a hand on the inside. See how I have my hand on the inside, giving it support, and I'm pushing against that hand, folding it over, pinching and smoothing, right? You can make a really strong joint. So you can see it's even a little bit easier than with regular clay. See how I've sealed that joint all the way together? Right, so that's going to be our basic shape. And this clay is very flexible in that if it dries out, you can add a little bit of water. It's really fun to use in that sort of way. I'm going to leave the bottom sort of ragged. All right, so we have our cone. And now we have our other piece of clay. And again, if you've done one of my classes before, you'll know what to do with this. If you cut it in half, you'll end up with sort of a short hat. If you cut it at an angle, see how it's a long, skinny triangle? So the longer you cut it, the taller and skinnier your hat's going to be. So if we're going to make a hat, we're going to make it really tall and skinny. So I'm going to cut it about here, right? So I'm just going to press, right, to end up with a triangle about like that. And now that's going to be our hat. And you're going to put your finger on the inside and fold it over your finger. Get that wet. And remember, there's going to be an archive of this, so if you need to catch up or do whatever, the archive will be available immediately after this is done. And it's not nearly as important to avoid air pockets or to do anything like that because we're not going to be firing this. So again, you can see I have the hat, and I'll just mush it. This could even be solid if you wanted this entirely solid. I have it hollow just to save clay, but it could be entirely solid. Now, traditionally, we'd stick this guy on. Right, we put a nose if you wanted to make a gnome or you wanted to do something else, but we're going to do something different, and that is we're going to add a realistic head, and that's mainly what we're going to be talking about today is how to sculpt a head. So even if you haven't completed all the step, go ahead and take a little bit of what you have left and scrunch it into a ball. Now, a traditional way of making a head is you make a ball, right, and you stick it on your guy. And yes, you can make a head like that. But what if we want to make a head a little bit more realistic looking? Instead of making a head that's made out of a ball, like she was, right? This fairy was made out of a ball. What I want you to do is take your clay and make it into a square, right? So we're going to start off with a square, right? You end up with something like that. Because if you look at a head, it's not really round. It's sort of round, but not really. We're really a bit more like a square. And so we're going to do it like that. And then what we're going to do is take the bottom of the square and pinch it, right? And you can see that's going to be a neck. And then we're going to take the top and just sort of round it over a little bit and pinch out that point, right? And so you can see how we're starting to get the shape of a head. And so having a head that is skinny and long and square gets you a lot closer to what a head looks like than starting with a ball. And since we're dealing kind of small here, it's really going to be hard to get some of our features. And so again, I'm just smoothing it along here, right? Smoothing it out. But traditionally, when someone makes a head, they often put eyes, way up high, right? And you have your mouth maybe down here, right? And so you have a head something like that. But in reality, those eyes are way too high in the head for a traditional shape. So what you want to do is you want to go about halfway. So about halfway down your head is about right in here. And you're going to use your pencil, and I'm going to use my other pencil because it has a little bit of a point, and that works really well. So we're going to use the point of the pencil, and we're going to use the eraser on the pencil, and those are going to be what we're going to use for a modeling tool. And so you can see what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go about halfway down the head, and using the point of the pencil, I'm just going to gently press in and rotate it. Okay. Let me shade it a little bit there so you can see it. Okay, and then I'm going to go on the other side, and I'm going to press it and rotate it. Right? So you can see it looks sort of funny right now, but all I'm doing is pressing in. And all we're going to do, how we're going to make this head is completely going to be subtractive. It's not going to be additive at all, because when you're dealing with something that's small, it's really too easy to add too much on, right? And so after we press that, and what that is going to be is that's going to be our eye socket. Notice how our eyes are in, right? So that's going to be the eye socket, right, down in there. So you can sort of see how that looks. Almost looks like I made a Spider-Man or something, right? All right, so then what we're going to do with this extra little piece is you're just going to take your fingers and you're going to pinch towards the top, right? So see how you're going to pinch towards the top and then flatten out, right, with your hands real gently. So you're pushing back for your eye socket, and you want to make sure and keep your cheekbone high, right? So see how I have that shape now? And so all we've done are 3 motions. We've pressed in with our pencil on each side, and then we've pinched with our fingers to make the nose, and then compressed a little bit at the bridge of the nose, right? So we have our forehead, we have our eyes, we have our nose, right? And then you can use your pencil to shape that a little bit, because there's a little bit of definition. And don't worry about your pencil making marks on your white clay, because in the end, what we're going to do is we're going to paint it, so all those pencil marks are just going to get covered over. So don't worry about that if you have some lead. All right, so now you can see that we have our head shape there. Sorry about the contrast on this. That's something I'll have to work on. It's hard to see with this white on white to really get the good contrast. All right, so now you can see how we have the eyes, sockets, we have the nose, and we've maintained, because we started with a square, we've maintained this cheekbone, which is really important. This cheekbone right here always sticks out, so you have sort of a flat front of your face, and you have that cheekbone, which really makes a head look like a head. Okay, and you have lots of pieces of clay, and you can do this as many times as you want. You can scrunch it down and use a little bit of water. All right, so the next part to add is we're going to add the mouth. And then lots of times people will roll a little piece of clay to make a mouth. But again, we want to do a subtractive mouth, because really lips don't stick out that far. So it's really easy to put too much on. So all we're going to do is take and press a little bit, right? See, even just that little bit gives us a mouth. We really don't need very much. It just needs to be really little, right? So we're just going to do a little bit more here. Just going to press it in. And then we often have a little piece right here that's indented a little bit. So I'm just going to press a little bit right there, right? And so you can already see how we're starting to have a mouth. And now where you actually have a little bit of a dip is right here underneath your lip before you get to your chin. So what I'm going to do with my pencil then is I'm going to go right underneath the bottom lip, and again, just press in a little bit. Okay, so I've pressed underneath the lip a little bit. And now you can see it sort of looks weird on the side, because really our chin comes down to a point, right? So as our chin comes down to a point, after we've done that, now we're going to pinch this a little bit further, and we'll often end up with too much down here. So we'll pinch that off, right, and work that back into the neck. All right, so now what you're going to have is your basic face shape, right? So you have a nose, you have a mouth that isn't too big, you have eye sockets. We don't have our eyes yet, but again, since we're just doing subtractive work here, we're not going to add pieces in for our eyes. We could if you were bigger, but all we're going to do is add a little bit of a circle here on each side for an eye, right? See how I added? Even just that already adds enough. It really does. The less you do in this, really the better you're going to look. And then all I'm going to do is take my fingernail and press underneath just a little bit. Oops, I might have pressed a little too much. Right? Just to make a little bit of a ridge, or you can use your pencil. all I'm doing is working underneath it just a little bit, right? And we're adding a little bit of definition. See how I added just a little bit of definition around the eye? And now you can sort of see how my head shape, see how his cheeks are puffed out a little bit, like it's a little forward. So there's still a little bit I can play with. But really the front of your face is very flat. You know, you could press the nose in, or you can start subtracting. Now, one of the fun things you can do with paper clay is after your head is done, you can sand it, you can Dremel it, you can do all this sort of stuff, right? So the least you do on your head, really the better it's going to be. You don't want to add lots and lots. And this was all done completely subtractive. And as you get bigger, you can get more and more exact. But what I would like, what's good to do as you start to model this is I just went ahead and did it, but look at a picture while you're modeling your head and really get an idea of the proportions of how things are going. All right, and so now you can see one thing that I haven't done is I haven't done any ears. And I found in general, when you're doing a basic head shape, ears are completely unnecessary, right? You're gonna look at a head and you're gonna say, the first thing you're not gonna say is not, hey, that guy doesn't have any ears. No, you're not, because it might be covered by a hat, it might be covered by hair, and ears are really hard to make look right, right? So we're not gonna make ears on this guy. All right, so we have a head, and if you've, remember, if you've just joined, if you didn't see the whole thing, this will be in archive, so you'll be able to see it afterwards. But we started with a square, and we just sort of pinched it all together to make head. Now, I know out there you may be making something completely different, but that's all right. So then to attach it with this paper clay, as you can see, I'm just making a little depression here on the neck. And then I'm going to go ahead and get some of my water and drip it in there. And then here's my body. And I'm going to fit that right in to the top of my triangle. And then I'm just going to work with my hands gently. And again, I have a hand on the inside. So you're just going to go around. And you can see under there where it needs to be attached. I'm just going to go around. Right. There we go. So now I have a head on my little guy. I can squish it down if I want to. All right. And I have some extras here. And you can do this with, you can get extra clay if you need to. But what I'm going to do with mine is I'm going to make some hair. So I'm going to make a flat disc here. So you can sort of see how that's going to stick on there. And then I'm going to take my fork. I'm going to sort of rough it up. And the most important thing about this paper clay is when you attach it, you just get it wet. So I'm going to put this over my head. And I'll stick it on like that. So it's very wet. I'm not too worried about the forehead spot because that is going to be covered with a hat. And then I'm going to take my fork and I'm just going to work it down. Just like you did with in pottery class, right? You're going to take this fork and really work that hair down. I think, right? And give it some fun texture, right? So you can see how I've worked the hair down. I'm going to pinch the face a little bit. So I'm going to make the face a little bit narrower. So by making the face a little bit narrow, but keeping the cheekbones up, right? It's been distorted just a little bit. So I'm going to bring the chin out a little bit, right, on my face. All right, and we can sort of see how the hat's going to fit on, right? How it's going to go on like that. All right, and so now the last piece that I have, and again, if you need extra clay, go ahead and get some extra clay. Is I'm going to roll this out a little bit thinner. Now, paper clay, you can roll a little bit thinner if you want to, because once it dries, right, so you can see I rolled it a little bit thinner this time, because once it dries, these wings, right, are on there pretty well. And if they ever break off, they're easy to glue on. All right. So I didn't end up with that much extra, but I'm going to cut that in half, right? So I'm going to end up with 2 wings like that. And I'm going to put water on there. And I'm going to attach it on. And I want to overlap a lot so I can really press on my wing, and I have a hand on the inside, always have a hand on the inside, so I'm pressing against the inside. And the wing will be a little floppy for right now, but you can let it set up for a little bit of time, an hour, and then make sure that it's molded exactly how you want it. So then I'll go ahead and add on my other one. One of the ways that you can help it stay upright is to put an upward angle on it. See how mine are angled upwards? If you put it straight out flat, it tends to flop over a little bit more. So we're going to go ahead and put that upward angle on it. And I'll show you from the back, right, what it looks like. So I've attached that on. And one of the ways I like to hide my joint, and I'm actually going to swipe a little bit of my hat because I need some extra clay and I ran out, is I like to have, after I put the wings on, take another piece of clay and actually have my hair go over my wings. So do you see I just got that clay a little bit wet, and then I'm going to work it on with my fork. Right, so there we go. So we have, and proportionally, you can see maybe what I'm off most on my proportions is maybe my head ended up a little bit too big for my little itsy bitsy body. That's okay, right? You can always redo it. The smaller you get, maybe I should use a little bit more clay, or I could pinch it out a little bit more. But the smaller you get, the harder it is to get some of those features. So I wanted to make it a little bit bigger so you could really see how those features work, right? So I'm going to have these wings. And lastly, I'm going to pinch a little bit more off so I can save some of that. All right. So now I'm going to take my hat and I'm going to mold it by pressing out a little bit here. If you want to add decoration to your hat, you certainly can at this stage, right? If we want to add some lines down the hat. So I'm going to add some lines like that. Right, so I have some lines down my hat. And then you see it's going to fit on. Maybe I'll have it askew a little bit. Or you can decide, you know what, that just doesn't fit. That's just way too big for what this represents. So I'm going to, you know what, I'm just going to pinch it smaller. So I'm going to pinch that whole top off. Now I'm just going to pinch it smaller, because you can just keep shaping and fitting and seeing how it works. And I think this hat just needs to be smaller and skinnier. And maybe I'm going to say, you know what, I don't really like those lines, so I'm going to smooth them away. That's fine. Go ahead and change what you're doing. So we're just going to smooth that away. All right, that proportionally, maybe that looks a little bit better, right? I think that looks a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get clay on the water, excuse me, on the inside of my hat. Some water in there. Position it out like that. And for this paper clay, I don't have to press it on very hard if I don't want to. I'll just sort of pinch it on. Yeah. So we have some wings. We have a hat, right, on our fairy here. And then I have some extra pieces of clay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one roll of clay here and roll it out really skinny, right, like that. And then one thing that you can do is I'm going to take my fork and I'm going to sort of work it at an angle. Right, see how I'm sort of working it at an angle, going across. The piece keeps wanting to spin around, right? There you are. So I'm making a little bit of roping here. And I'll get it wet. Maybe I'll make a brim. Make a brim around my hat. Right, so the key to making this paper clay work is really just getting lots of water. You just want a lot of water on there to really get that brim. Make sure that it sticks. The wings sort of want to flop over. All right, and then I have some more pieces. And what I'm going to do with my extra pieces is maybe I'll make some I don't know, what should I make? Should I make a little, maybe a little something that's going to be a bug? So all I have is a little oval there. I'll dip that in the water, right? A little bit of an oval. Maybe I'll stick it on her side here. Press it on there gently. And then to make it look like a bug, I'm going to take the tip of my knife, and you could use the, or just take, maybe I'll take my eraser, right? So I'll take my eraser, and I'll take and bring the wings up. Then I'll bring some feet down, and maybe bring pinched antenna up. Add some stripes. Oh, my hat got too heavy. Do you see how my paper clay started to come apart? So a little water under there. Stick your head back on. Honestly, I don't know if my bug looks much like a bug, does it? Let's make sure we get the hat back on there. And so if your clay gets a little too wet, or it gets a little too, loses some of its strength, you can let it set up a little bit. It really will crust over on the outside and get dry on the outside and still stay a little soft on the inside. So just be careful. But once it's all dried, it really will stay pretty strong. So my bug didn't end up much like a bug, but it looks like a, I don't know what does it look like, dead fish with some bones. I don't know, something crazy. All right, so put her here. So you can decorate it, you can design it, you can draw on it. You can even take some pieces and form them into something. You can take some stamps and press it into the stamp. You can let it dry, and once they're a little bit drier, you can stick stuff on. I'm going to bring the hat forward a little bit so that it doesn't put as much stress on her neck. Maybe I'll add a little ball to the top of her hat. So I'm going to roll a little tiny ball. I'm going to make sure that it has good attachment points by making a hole in there. Drip some water in there so that it fits on the tip. All right, so she has a ball in her hat. All right, and so what we're going to do is once you have her more or less how you want her, or again, whatever you're making, I don't know if you're making a fairy out there, if you're making a face, or you're making a big sculpture, or whatever you're making, you have a whole pound of this clay. If you need more, you can always get more. I have plenty more. What we're going to do is you're going to let this dry, and it's going to take between a day or 2 days to dry. And when it dries, it will be hard, right? You can see it's light, right? And you all have temper paints that you can paint it with, and you can see how the temper paints paint on. And it may be a little bit matte in texture, but you can always put either like a clear lacquer over it if you want to, or you can paint it with with acrylic paints if you want to paint it with acrylic paints. I didn't provide acrylic paints because a lot of them are not washable. The temper paints I provided are all washable. So you can go ahead and paint it up. You can let it dry, paint it again, let it dry, paint it again, let it dry, paint again. This is not, however, going to be safe to put outside in the weather. So I wouldn't put these outside in the weather because the water can get in there. But you can put a clear finish on the outside, or you can do a spray polyurethane or something like that to help strengthen them. But they end up being pretty strong, pretty durable, pretty easy to play with if you want to play with them. And you can, paint it like this, or you can paint it like this, doesn't matter. Or you can make gnomes, you can make animals. And so what we're going to do next time is I may go over painting just a little bit once this dries next week. So I'll do this again next week. But what we're going to do next week is, instead of working on how to make faces, we're going to work on how to make animals. So how can you make a dog face versus a cat face versus a llama face, right? What are some of the ways we can manipulate those sorts of shapes? And here, let me get down so you can see me. All right. So how are we going to manipulate some of those sorts of shapes so that we can start making maybe some animals, some animal friends? And what are the key ways to pinch our clay, right, to do our minimal pinches to actually start to get something to look how it is. And I'll get a little bit better so I have a little bit better contrast here for next time. All right, but you can keep using your paper clay. This will be archived if you ever want to watch it and go over some pieces again if you want to go back to forming the head or whatever it is. If you have any comments, any questions, please send me an email at brooke@greenroadpottery.com, and I can answer those. If there's a different format that you would prefer, if this was the first time I've done this YouTube format, if there's a different format that will work better, for sure, I'll try and get my lighting a little bit better. I have too much light coming from that window, so it's blowing out the highlights in my white clay. So I'll get that improved for next time. But so we're going to go ahead and shape animals. So we're going to make a whole bunch of different kinds of animals. If we want to make a little animal farmyard, an animal barnyard, and this clay is really fun for doing that. And if there's anything else that you would like to know about, or anything else that you would like to make or go through how to make, just let me know, because I'm happy to do that. And I'll keep doing these every Thursday at 3:30 for the next however many weeks until I run out of ideas. And if you ever run out of clay, just let me know and I will get you some more clay. So thank you very much for watching today. And hopefully you'll have a good time making a whole bunch of little creatures. These are actually light enough. If you ever are thinking ahead for Christmas ornaments or other sorts of stuff, these can be really light. And they will, if you put the lacquer on them and you put, or the urethane, or you use acrylic paints, they'll end up being shiny as well. And you can add things on afterwards. You can glue, you can hot glue stuff on here. You can, I actually have a bunch of feathers that just came in. So if anyone really wants feathers, I have them over there somewhere. I got a bunch of decorative feathers. Just let me know and I'll give you a bunch of decorative feathers if you want to glue some feathers and other sorts of stuff onto your character. All right, cool. So thanks so much for watching me today. I'll see if I can get a little bit better video set up too. It's sort of hard with how to scrunch all this in. Thank you so much for watching my first attempt at doing my online sculpture pottery clay class. Hopefully I'll get to see you in person in not too long, but for right now, we will stay online. All right, have a great day out there. It looks like it's pretty nice. Go outside for a little bit, and I will see you next week. Thanks a lot.